What's up guys, it's Justin here, and today I've got a review of the Apple iPhone XR. So if you guys didn't know already, I've been using the XS Max ever since it came out, and if you guys want to check out my full review on that, I definitely recommend you do so, because in that video I do more comparisons between the iPhone X and the new XS and XS Max, whereas this video we're kind of going to talk about some of the differences between the XR and XS Max and whether or not some of the changes are going to be worth the savings in price. If you guys didn't know already, I did announce a winner for the iPhone XS giveaway, and because over 100,000 of you entered, I'm going to be running a giveaway of the XR through to the new year. If you guys want to go ahead and enter, just make sure you check the link down below, but the typical, make sure you subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and leave a comment down below with your favorite color of the XR. And also make sure you go ahead and follow me on my Twitter and Instagram page, as the winner will be announced there on December 31st. So for the first time since the iPhone 5C, Apple has introduced a whole range of colors for this phone. You have the choice between blue, white, yellow, orange, and black, as well as a product red at launch, and I personally like the blue the most. I do have the white one here as well, which is kind of more simple and low-key, but I think the blue actually looks the best in my opinion. It is made out of glass on the back, and on the side you're going to find an aluminum finish, and the phone itself comes in at $250 less than the iPhone XS in the US. Some of the biggest differences that you're going to find between the iPhone XS and the XR is the lack of a secondary telephoto camera, as well as an LCD display on the front, which is not the OLED panel. But I think a lot of people were happy to see that the iPhone XR has pretty much all the major advantages that the XS has this year. But of course, as a result of that, it doesn't come in at a budget price, but instead kind of a lower premium to the iPhone XS and XS Max. So I think the first thing we're really going to notice is the hardware. This phone is built out of a 7000 series aluminum as opposed to stainless steel. You have a glass back that is available in a huge variety of colors, including the black and white, which is more simple, but also orange, yellow, red, and blue. The phone also has a bit of a thicker and heftier feel to it, coming in just under 200 grams, as well as an IP67 rating as opposed to IP68. But on the inside, you do have the same A12 Bionic processor that you're going to find on the XS and XS Max, paired with 3 gigs of RAM versus 4. Even though this phone looks really nice though, it is going to be very prone to cracks if you drop it, and also scratches. So one way to protect it or give it a cool texture is with a dbrand skin. You can go ahead and customize it yourself in all different colors, so I'm going to leave a link to them down below. I think one thing that I really like about it though is the size, and being someone who used the iPhone X last year being the only size available for that model, and switching over to the XS Max this year, I will say that the XS Max is a bit bigger than my liking for a device, but at the same time I really wanted to take advantage of the large display for watching movies and videos in general on the device, so I decided to go with the XS Max instead of the XS as my daily driver. The iPhone XR on the other hand has a 6.1 inch display, which falls perfectly between the two sizes of 5.8 on the XS and 6.5 on the XS Max. I really do think it's a perfect size, and if you're someone trying to decide between the size of the XS and XS Max and just want something in between, but also don't really care about the telephoto camera and want to save some money, the XR is really going to be a no-brainer in that case, and I think Apple is really smart for making this size fit right in between. I think when it comes to price difference though, the display is what people have been talking the most about. On this phone, you're going to find a liquid retina display that is LCD with a resolution of 1792 by 828 with a PPI of over 300. Even though this is an LCD display as opposed to OLED, I will tell you that this is one of the best LCD displays that I've seen on a smartphone. The colors are overall still very vibrant, the display is sharp, and it is also very accurate when it comes to color representation. The blacks still blend in very nicely, and it is still HDR compatible when it comes to playback. Even though I have been using an OLED display with the iPhone X and now the XS Max for the past couple years, I will be lying if I told you that I could tell a difference between these two screens. If you were to look at it side by side closely, there is definitely a bit of a difference between them, but nothing major whatsoever, and the display on this iPhone XR, I will tell you, is perfectly fine. Even though this is an OLED display, which is normally known for deep blacks, if you open up like a black wallpaper on this device, you will notice that it blends into the edges and the notch very well. I think for almost anyone out there or an average consumer who is looking to save $250, then the display on this screen is going to be worth the money. You definitely can't deny that the bezels that go around the side of the iPhone XR are definitely larger than the one on the XS and XS Max, as well as the iPhone X from last year, but I think with a black case you can hide it pretty well, and for most people I don't really think you're going to care. From an appearance standpoint, it is definitely a downgrade, but it really does come down to whether or not you want to spend that extra money, and I'm pretty sure after like a couple weeks you'll be totally fine with it. One thing that you are also missing on the display of the iPhone XR being LCD is 3D Touch, which honestly in the past like 3 years I believe that Apple has done it, I literally haven't used it a single time. The alternative for 3D Touch is something that Apple calls Haptic Touch, which is kind of just a long press with haptic feedback, but with Apple having one of the best haptic feedbacks on their devices, it is re-emulated quite well, but like I mentioned, I just never really found myself remembering to use 3D Touch on any of my devices. So when it comes to the camera of the iPhone XR, it is the exact same as the main camera on the iPhone XS and XS Max. On paper, it's a 12 megapixel sensor with an f1.8 aperture and a 1.4 micron pixel size, and you have all the advantages that the camera on the XS and XS Max have. In fact, in some ways, I will say that I almost like the one on the XR a little bit more than the XS and XS Max in portrait mode. I did do a full video of the camera on the iPhone XS and XS Max, but just to summarize things, the camera on the XR is really good. It has great dynamic range, good smart HDR, and although Apple does go for a bit of a flatter look with wider dynamic range, with shadows retained and the highlights retained, and as a result of good dynamic range, I'm able to edit my photos a little bit more easily, which is something that I find myself doing a lot when it comes to VSCO and Lightroom. The colors are very accurate and the exposure does a pretty good job most of the time. But when it comes to portrait mode, one thing that you're going to notice on the iPhone XR is that because it only has one camera, it actually has a wider field of view compared to the XS and XS Max. In the dual camera situation, the telephoto lens is used, but in this case, since it does only have the single camera, you have a wider portrait mode, which I actually think looks much better. As for video recording, the iPhone XR can record up to 4K 60 and record in stereo audio. And when it comes to video recording, the iPhone XR has the best recording of any other smartphone in my opinion, both when it comes to quality, the exposure, dynamic range, as well as stabilization, which has kind of a very natural look. In fact, some of the clips of my typical videos as well as travel vlogs are actually shot 4K on the iPhone, and I just slotted them in with 1DX footage, and I don't think anybody actually noticed that. The front camera is the same 7 megapixel with f2.2 aperture, and I think Apple's always done a pretty good job in terms of skin tones on the front-facing camera, but in terms of quality, I feel like 7 megapixels just isn't enough. I would have liked to have seen them do some more improvements to the front-facing camera, but one thing that we do have now is stabilization on the front. So for those who want to use a front-facing camera for video or your Instagram stories, then that's going to be a good improvement. The front-facing camera also does have the True Depth portrait mode. When it comes to software, the iPhone XR ships with iOS 12, and with the recent 12.1 update, you have things such as previewing your aperture while you're in live view in the portrait mode, as well as new emojis and stuff, and also dual SIM support, with one being the eSIM and the other being the physical SIM on the XR and XS, as well as the XS Max. Unfortunately, that isn't something that I have been able to test out because my carrier in Canada doesn't support it, but it is compatible on the iPhone XR. Otherwise, being someone who has used iOS for many years now, and obviously coming from the iPhone X and XS Max, I don't really notice any differences on the XR. It is essentially the same device for the most part. And Apple has really done a good job kind of fine-tuning the experience and building upon what they already had before. Notes added a few new features as well as a screen time tracker inside settings. The new notification sender is also really nice. Where I did notice a difference in this device though was the battery life, and this phone has a 2942 mAh battery, which isn't large by any means, but because of the LCD display consuming less power and stuff, this phone was able to last really long. I was able to get the same battery life on the iPhone XR as I get on the iPhone XS Max, if not a little bit more. And that is definitely very nice to see, because one of the reasons why I haven't switched over to the iPhone XS, despite it having a pretty good battery life, is because I do use my phone a lot and I find myself running out the iPhone XS before the end of the day. So when it comes to battery life on the iPhone XR, it is the best battery life that I've gotten on any iPhone that is currently offered. Of course, you do have wireless charging because of the glass back and also fast charging compatibility, but as you might know by now, you're going to have to go ahead and buy the charger by yourself because included in the box is a 5-watt charger. Although I did mention that the iPhone XS and XS Max should have definitely came with the fast charger because of its price point, I would have totally understood if Apple included just a 5-watt charger on the lower priced XR model. As for speakers, you do have a stereo setup with one being located on the front and one on the bottom, which is the same one that you're going to find on the iPhone XS and XS Max. And one of the improvements that Apple has also made this year, aside from them being louder, is being better balance. So at the end of the day, what do I think of the iPhone XR? And the answer is, I think Apple's going to sell a ton of these. Of course, being someone who uses their smartphone for pretty much everything and kind of relying on Apple's flagship, the XS Max and the 10 in the previous year, I wasn't as interested of the iPhone XR naturally. I had kind of lower expectations for it, and I thought I would just use it, try it out, bring you guys my review and my opinions, but after using it, I will tell you that I am pretty impressed, and I can see why Apple is going to sell a ton of these phones. Aside from all the beautiful colors, I like the fact that they have included the same processing power as on the iPhone XS for the most part, as well as the fact that they brought over the main camera from the iPhone XS and XS Max. The display, like anyone else, was one of the biggest questions that I had when I first saw it, being LCD, and with a lot of smartphones not really having the LCD display anymore, I will tell you that this is amongst the best LCD displays that you're going to find. And unless you compare them side by side, you're not really going to notice a difference, but most importantly, just from using the display itself, you're not going to look at it and say, this is definitely not as good of a display as I expected. Honestly, if I didn't have the option between the iPhone XS and XS Max, I would be perfectly fine with using this as my daily driver. Especially because I kind of had a tough time deciding between the XS and XS Max, as you guys might remember when it came to size. If you guys are coming from any device before the iPhone 8 or 8 Plus and are finally ready to give up the home button, then I think this is a device that you're definitely going to be very happy with as a 2018 upgrade. Although some are disappointed that Apple didn't necessarily take the budget approach with their colored phones this time, kind of like the 5C, this is a phone that will definitely last you for many years to come because it pretty much has all of the best of what Apple is offering at the moment. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like and leave a question down below, and I'll see you all in the next one.